We can start at minimum as a subcommittee, and we'll establish a quorum when we have a quorum present. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you all to a hearing of the California State Senate Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee. We have just a few bills to be considered this morning, followed by a follow-up conversation with representatives of the California Energy Commission. We're just shy of a quorum currently. We'll begin as a subcommittee and ask Senator Kehoe to begin presenting her bills.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, before I do, let me just announce to the committee and the members watching at home, SB 1414, I understand, is being pulled from today's calendar.
Yes.
So we'll consider that at the next hearing, so you have one or two left.
Correct. 1437 and 1455. Go in numerical order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and I want to thank the chairman and the staff for the work on the measure. And I'd like to take as authors' amendments the recommendations listed on page 2, comment 3 of the analysis. that directs the CPUC to undertake an analysis, including the evaluation of transmission, electricity supply system, benefits related to electric vehicles, etc. That's already. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, last year I authored SB 626, and thanks to your support, it was signed into law. It requires the CPUC to examine the soonest opportunity to embrace electric vehicles on a general basis. We need to let consumers know that there are some steps that have to be taken to make electric vehicles as convenient as possible. The number one concern of consumers of electric vehicles is that they may get somewhere and run out of the charge. So charging infrastructure is critical to moving Californians to a higher comfort level with electric vehicles. And if we are to meet our greenhouse gas emissions and other targets, setting about 1.5 million vehicles by 2020, we need to have a good, robust infrastructure. The previous bill determines the cost to ratepayers that will be associated with energy and infrastructure necessary to transition to electric vehicles. That's last year's bill. The good news is starting this fall, there will be electric vehicles offered to consumers at or under $30,000. Nissan is expected to introduce the Nissan Leaf this fall. General Motors has the Volt coming. As these vehicles become more available, consumers have questions as to how much it will cost to improve the energy grid to accommodate electric vehicles into the grid, as well as trying to meet the demands placed on it by other electronic load growth, chargers, digital videos, big screen TVs, etc. The Public Utilities Commission is already looking to answer some of these questions through their own proceedings, and this measure will give them until 2012 to complete that work. I ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have witnesses in support of this item?
I believe we do.
Support if amended.
Okay. Please identify yourself.
Yes. Lenny Goldberg from Turn. We have a supportive amended position on this. We welcome that this bill opens up the discussion of ratepayer costs for the electric vehicle infrastructure. However, the language currently assumes that there will be subsidies from ratepayers. It says, say what those subsidies should be. We appreciate transparency, but we take a more nuanced view. And let me explain it just briefly. If there is increased load, distribution upgrades are always necessary. Those are spread among all ratepayers. It doesn't matter whether it's new industrial load or any new electrical load requires distribution upgrades among ratepayers, and that's in general. However, we also think that if you're recharging in the middle of the night, there may be benefits to the grid which will compensate those costs. What we don't believe is that there should be any presumption, and in fact we would rather that the legislature said ratepayers should not subsidize the actual electric vehicle infrastructure. We understand the demands on the benefits and costs in the electrical system, but we don't think beyond that we should be doing any subsidies of electric vehicles. So
your position is support if amended?
Support if amended is our position. On the amendments would take out the presumption of any subsidies, basically say examine the costs and benefits to ratepayers. We would love a bill if this legislature would pass it that said we should not directly subsidize, but I think...
Is that support if amended position in writing?
That support, it is not yet in writing. We were discussing with the author's office the
we'll continue to work with
the
Mr.
issues.
Goldberg on it, and I think the analysis was wanted to look at a more nuanced approach to rather than a concept about subsidy.
Okay. Thank you. Other
Does
witnesses
Mr. Goldberg have the same opinion relative to high-tech folk who have lots of high-tech kind of things in their house, and they buy the new iPad and they get new computers and all that sort of thing. Is that the
Kindles?
Kindle? So you have the same.
As electrical load grows, we allocate distribution costs to ratepayers. Now, those are allocated differently. In the industrial sector, they're allocated to industrial ratepayers. In the residential sector, so that is, if there is significant load growth, we have always agreed that that's a distribution cost for ratepayers. The difference with vehicles is that is not a function of the delivery of electricity. That's a function of the delivery of fuel, of transportation fuel. And so there will be demands on the grid, and we want to make sure that we're not subsidizing those electric vehicles. There will be benefits from charging in the middle of the night and flattening the load, and there will be costs in the distribution system. Beyond that, we would have a real concern with any subsidies that were to go out for transportation vehicles.
Senator Wright, question for the author, question for the witness?
To the author, I hate to admit I actually agree with Lenny Goldberg. Don't
agree with me a lot.
Mr. Chairman, that is scary, by the way.
I know. And
absolutely scary.
I think as well, Mr. Chair, as we're looking at the infrastructure and how we use it, that we may need to look as well at some standardization on how the cars applied to the grid system. I mean, one of the things that we did years ago that was utterly half stupid is we created a system of cars that you plug in, assuming that all the cars would use the same system, and they don't. And so we spent a lot of money in many instances for devices that you still see up, and you virtually never see a car there because many of the new cars don't use the system that we installed. So it would make sense if we're going to have a ramp up in these vehicles that not only should we not have a subsidy, but we should make sure that whatever system we use is consistent so that you're not trying to, say, drive around and not only find a charger, but find a charger that is compatible with your particular vehicle. So if this is going to be the thing, there should be a study both in compatibility and to ensure that the subsidy that Mr. Goldberg described doesn't.
And this is on the list of issues in front of the PUC as they've undertaken their rulemaking process as well. And I should note that this committee is scheduled to have a hearing, I believe, next month on this general conversation as well, the needed infrastructure and the policy tweaks, financing questions behind it as we move into this era of more both full electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids as well.
May I respond a little bit?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg, and to the senators for comments. And I think the comments go right to the heart of the matter. What the cost benefits are to the ratepayers for any changes to the grid, if any, we don't know what they'll be, and the PUC needs to do an analysis of that. The idea of universal hardware is a separate question, but I think a really important one too. That's not addressed in this bill. Mr. Goldberg bringing up, whether people charge up at home overnight when it's off-peak or whether they charge at work during the peak of the day. All this has to be accounted for and balanced out. We don't have the answers to all of it, but the bill will direct the PUC to do further investigation. So when we make policy, we'll be looking at real numbers or accountable factual analysis. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition to this item? Further questions, comments from committee? Bill has been moved as amended. Let's actually first establish a quorum here. Let's call the roll.
Padilla.
Here.
Dutton.
Here.
Corbett. Here. Cox. Here. Flores. Kehoe.
Aye.
Lowenthal. Oropeza. Semidian. Here. Strickland. Wright.
Here.
Okay, quorum is established. We have SB 1437 before us. Senator Cox moves the bill as amended. Let's call the roll.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Dutton.
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Cox. Cox, aye. Flores? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal? Oropeza? Semidion? Semidion, aye. Strickland? Wright?
Aye.
Wright, aye. 7.
Okay, that has sufficient votes. We'll leave it on call in case we get another member
Thank you, Mr.
who
Chairman.
wants to add on.
1455?
Yes.
Thank you. And again, my thanks to the chairman and the committee for some suggestions on the language. I want to take as authors' amendments noted in the analysis under comments 2 and 3 on page 2. That'll change the current contents of the bill and add instead some new language. I'll go through it briefly. I think you have it in front of you. I hope you do anyway. Direct the PUC to provide consumer information on the essentials of readying a residence for an EV charging infrastructure, including the specialized charging equipment necessary for an electric vehicle, tariffs, metering, and load management techniques, and any other information deemed necessary to ensure that a consumer who intends to purchase an EV is aware of the cost and infrastructure associated with refueling the EV. And the bill requires the information to be posted on the PUC's website. So that's the author's amendments. Again, relative to the last bill, as consumers move towards electric vehicles, I think it's good policy for the state of California to be providing accurate information to the consumers, not to do with particular brands of cars, but with the general concept of what you need to do at your home to recharge your electric vehicle, and conservation methods and the costs involved in that. So that requires the CPUC, in consultation with the Energy Commission, utilities, electric vehicle manufacturers, and other stakeholders, to develop an electric vehicle information guide to be posted on their website. It's pretty simple. I would ask for your aye vote. It is double referred to Senate Transportation.
Yes. Okay.
Thank
the
you.
bill has been moved as amended, and as has been said, would be referred to Senate Transportation and Housing as well. Do we have witnesses in support of this item?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Dan Call, the Union Concerned Scientist. For the reasons that the author just mentioned and the importance of moving forward with planning for the electric vehicle infrastructure that we'll need, we support this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Are the witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions from the committee? Senator Wright.
Maybe it's written. I didn't see who was paying for this.
We'll know more about that when it gets to appropriations. It would be a PUC project and taken up in their budget.
Do we have any estimated cost? Or
I don't
where
yet,
did it
Senator
get?
Wright. Some of this information is being developed now. We know that there's a task force meeting in San Diego with the IOUs and energy conservation people and electric vehicles to start installation of 1,000 home electric recharging stations for cars. So we think the information's out there. We want to gather it and post it on the website.
My concern is similar to the concern on the other side. I'm not adverse to the idea of the information being available. I'm concerned that it becomes a subsidy and somebody's got to pay for it. I mean, at the end of the day, somebody has to advance this cost. If we make a policy decision that the state should pay for it, then we should affirmatively say that that should be the case. I'm not ready to vote for a blank check. I don't have any idea how much it costs. I don't have any idea who's going to pay for it, and that concerns me. I'd like to know that we're going to put a fee on the cars that sell, or we're going to. There ought to be some nexus as to how you pay for it. I'm not concerned that the booklet itself is bad. I think the idea of the booklet makes good sense.
It's a virtual booklet.
Well, there's two I think, categories or questions about costs. One is the costs, this bill brings forward of compiling the information, much of which may be out there already, and whether it's a paper booklet or a virtual booklet online, sort of the costs of the bill directly. I think Senator Wright is speaking to the greater costs and some of the policy questions that, as far as I know, have yet to be answered. Is it incumbent upon the purchaser of an electric vehicle to pay for the cost of the charging station? Is it a cost on the vehicle manufacturer? Is it a cost on the local utility? I mean, some of these issues, I believe, are still being discussed and fleshed out. So my concern is, who's making the decisions that will lead to the information to be published physically in a booklet or be posted on a website? Are some of those policy issues still outstanding or not?
I think some of them are outstanding. This bill calls for the information to be posted on the website. So let me double check. But we're not talking about physically printing a booklet, are we at this point? Right. It does not. So this is posting the information.
No, I understand. It's on a website, so it's going to be minimal costs. My question isn't the cost of putting information up on the website. My question is more the information that will be put up on the website. Who's made the final decisions on some of those policies that we're telling consumers, hey, you're on the hook for this charging station at your house, or you're not on the hook. It's going to be subsidized by all ratepayers. Those are significant policy questions that are still outstanding.
This is.
So I agree. I'm just pointing out the difference in I think Senator Wright's question.
Yeah,
so the answers to some of these questions will have been resolved in the next year or so in the time frame that you're requiring the information be made available.
Senator Wright had a question about the preparation of the information, I think, and we deal with posting new information on websites all the time. I don't want to venture a guess, but it's usually under the threshold for suspense, which is about $100,000. So I don't think there's a significant staff cost there for gathering the information. Your other questions, Mr. Chairman, are right on point, and I think there's going to be different ways to answer it. I think some consumers, maybe the early adopters will be eligible for subsidies out of the 118 funds. The CEC is looking at, and we're directing them to do more on that with electric vehicles. Other people are probably going to pay out of pocket. I don't think the utilities are going to pick up the cost, but these things have to be fleshed out. But what we want to do here is get the PUC, ahead of the curve, get the information readily available to consumers who may be interested in purchasing an electric vehicle and putting it on the PUC website.
Okay. Further questions from committee? Senator Dutton.
Well, there's a greater cost of not doing anything because you got to let the public know what's going on, and frankly, it'll be market-driven to some degree anyway. A lot of this information, what they're coming out with, because a lot of this information is going to come from the manufacturers. The CUP has a responsibility to make sure that this is put together in such a way that the consumer is protected, and so I'm not really that uncomfortable with it. I'd feel a lot better if we had third-party reviews with regards to a lot of the things we do, but unfortunately, so far, I haven't been very successful in that venture. But still, I would still like to move the bill as amended, and I think it is a step in the right direction.
Okay. Bill has been moved as amended. Would go to Senator Lowenthal's committee next. Other questions, comments from committee? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Dutton.
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Cox.
Aye.
Cox, aye. Flores. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Oropeza. Semidian. Semidian, aye. Strickland.
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Wright. 9, 7,
Okay.
8.
That has sufficient votes, but we'll leave it on call. Allow absent members to add on.
Thank you.
In a few minutes. Next author, please.
Okay. Okay, our next bill, you're going to take these in file order then?
Yes, sir.
Senator Padilla, it's SB 1040.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, before it's SB 1040, but let me provide a little bit of a backdrop for this bill. As most of us are increasingly aware, broadband is indeed the backbone of the 21st century digital economy. And it is now documented that people who lack adequate internet connections have fewer economic opportunities. About 4% of Californians, that translates into 1.4 million people, do not have sufficient access to broadband services in their homes. This is a result of the Broadband Task Force report from just a couple of years ago. And only about 50% that have internet connectivity have connectivity at sufficient speeds for telecommuting, online education, and accessing government services. This bill would extend the California Advanced Services Fund so that the PUC can continue to make grants to help fund the deployment of broadband infrastructure in areas of the state without high-speed internet access. The current program is authorized to an amount of $100 million, and the PUC has already awarded more than $87 million in grants. Grants awarded in areas such as the Pinion Project in Riverside County, the Livingston Project in Merced County that are completed, another project nearly completed in the Cabello-Laytonville Project in Mendocino County. So the program, by initial measures, is successful. But applications for more grants are pending, and with even more applications expected, with matching funds or leveraging funds opportunities available through the Recovery Act, we believe the $100 million current level of the program is insufficient. So this bill would make an additional $125 million available for CASF grants over the next 5 years so that we can continue funding these necessary projects. Extending the sunset is also necessary because this fund is a reimbursement program, and project construction and completion will continue years after grants are initially awarded. This bill would also add 2 new accounts to the fund. The first, a broadband infrastructure revolving loan account, so we have a loan tool or mechanism to complement the grant tool that's currently in place. The second account being a rural and urban regional broadband consortia grant that Sonny McPeak will speak to. These consortias, regional consortias, have been successful in organizing local stakeholders and competing for both public and private funds to further deploy broadband in those areas. I accept the amendments recommended in the bill analysis to specify more detail about the accounts as before you, as well as technical amendments to clarify that the new funds be made available over 5 years, not 7. Testifying in support of the bill are Cindy McPeak from the California Emerging Technologies Fund, as well as Jack Lutza from the Public Utilities Commission.
Speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Sonny McPeak with the California Emerging Technology Fund to support SB 1040. We also have submitted to the committee 16 letters of support to date that I'm aware of from throughout California that include the Tuolumne Amador Community Action Agency, Big Sur Community Emergency Response Team, the Big Sur Health Center, the California Center for Rural Policy at Humboldt State University, the Central Coast Broadband Consortium that was incubated at CSU Monterey Bay, the Chico Economic Planning Corporation, the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, Del Norte County Board of Supervisors, the Great Valley Center representing both the Central Valley of Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley, Humboldt Area Foundation, Humboldt State University, Mono County and Mammoth Lakes Unified School District, Redwood Coast Rural Action, the Small Business Development Center, United Way of Los Angeles, and Valley Vision of Greater Sacramento region. Thank you. Also present, just to show their support, is Connie Stewart of the California Center for Rural Policy at Humboldt State University, and Steve Karp of their Small Business Development Center, Brent Smith, who is the CEO of the Sierra Economic Development Corporation, and Kathy Emerson, who is Chico State University. I mentioned these organizations and individuals of support because they have witnessed the wisdom, actually, of the legislature approving the California Advanced Services Fund and the PUC initiating it a couple of years ago. When Senator Padilla mentioned the 1.4 million people who are totally unserved in California, and although that's only 4% of our population because we're a very large state, it is equivalent to the population of the state of Maine. And those 1.4 million people live across 44,000 square miles in California. That is the size in geography of the state of Kentucky. In addition, every region of California has unserved rural pockets or very underserved communities. And over the next few years, we want to see California continue to be a leader in broadband technology. I think the stakes went up when the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, released their national broadband plan with a goal of having essentially ubiquitous service at much higher speeds than we are today, and also getting 90% of all Americans online by 2020. We have a very tall order to meet, and we want California to be positioned. As Senator Padilla has said, there was quite a bit of subscription already to the California Advanced Services Fund. Building on your wisdom and extending and expanding it will give California the leverage to draw down more dollars, private investment, and federal dollars. So the California Emerging Technology Fund is here as a sponsor. We did not initiate this. I will give all credit to you and the CPUC for having the idea. We have seen how effective it is. What we have done with our monies, and remember, you started with $100 million in the California Advanced Services Fund, and we'll be expanding this. The California Emerging Technology Fund was capitalized with only $60 million, with the goal of go close the digital divide in California. As I've said, it's a very large state. To this farm girl, $60 million looks like a lot, but it is just a drop in the bucket when you're building infrastructure. And so what we did was to invest in regional leadership, bringing all of the stakeholders together. And what we found, as evidenced by the actual applications to the PUC, is that when those regional consortia are involved, you get the most cost-effective proposals from more competitors submitted for the California Advanced Services Fund. So that's the nexus to one of the new accounts that Senator Padilla has introduced. And then secondly, so many of the providers in these very remote rural areas are small. And while the California Advanced Services Fund was generously capitalized by Verizon and AT&T, and I know Tim McCallion's here, and I can't believe that Bill Devine isn't in the room, or if he's not, he's monitoring me. He's here, okay. I just wanted to note that those companies, can't serve in all cases the very remote areas, and so it's sometimes some very small providers who need a little bit of working capital, and it was the Sierra Economic Development Corporation in particular who said a revolving loan fund would help, and they have the actual experience of operating these kinds of assistance to small companies. With that, we're available to answer any questions that you have, and also the experts that are in the audience can testify.
Okay. Your next witness.
Members, Alicia Priego with the California Public Utilities Commission. Our legislative subcommittee has recommended support and co-sponsorship of the bill, and we want to thank the author for moving this important issue forward. Just to briefly echo Senator Padilla's comments, we have committed nearly $90 million towards projects. Some of those applications are tied to Recovery Act grants, and if any of those are rejected, we expect that they'll come back and apply to the Advanced Services Fund for additional money, which would push us past the $100 million authorized in the current program. Also, we believe that the extension of the sunset date is important because some of these projects, any that are approved at the end of this year or moving forward with our CEQA requirements, which is a minimum of 8 months, will also push them past the 2013 date. And then lastly, with the National Broadband Plan that was recently released, the extension of the program corresponds to that 10-year timeline and will position the state to continue to be able to maximize opportunities in the future and be responsive to federal initiatives that are rolled out in the coming years. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other witnesses in support?
Yes, sir. Hi. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you, and members of the committee. My name is Robert Longer, and I'm here on behalf of the Communication Workers of America. And I've given you a copy of a letter that was presented to Senator Padilla, the chair, in regards to our support for SB 1040. To keep it brief, the Communication Workers of America have actively been pursuing what we call a Speed Matters campaign. This Speed Matters campaign has been active in broadband mapping to identify key underserved areas across the nation, including here in California, as has been pointed out previously. If you could summarize that in a motto, it would be "No child left offline." We need to provide service to those who don't have it. That's the basic reality that we need to attain here. And I think that SB 1040 will do this in a way that will allow for future appropriations to serve our communities better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tim Valderrama on behalf of TechNet. I'll keep my remarks short because Ms. McPeak did such a good job of covering the majority of these issues. But
we appreciate that.
I would just go ahead and say that at TechNet we believe that broadband deployment is one of the best fiscal stimulus measures you can make in the state. We'd just also like to point out that it's an excellent way to increase services and to increase access to health care, education, and other government services. So thank you, and we encourage your I vote.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brent Smith, the CEO of Sierra Economic Development Corporation. We serve an area from Sacramento to the Oregon border, all the Sierra counties up there. I want to address one specific part of it, and that is that part which relates to a revolving loan fund. The point here is that this is not an experiment. This is a proven way to go. We know that because we did it. In the 2 years that we were working for Sunny with the Gold Country Broadband Consortium, we went beyond our role in performing that project to also make loans to 2 broadband companies that were serving that area. And with our small loans that were leveraged at more than 2 to 1 from private investment, in an 18-month period, about 1,500 households received broadband service that hadn't had it before. And those are solid loans. They've been making their payments just like they should. Capitalizing system expansion that would not otherwise have taken place without our resources, because otherwise it doesn't fit in their financial models. This program will work, and I urge you to support the bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Monique Dixon. I represent Siskiyou County Economic Development Council. We are California's 5th largest county. Our population is huge. We are nearly completely unserved or underserved. And we feel this broadband is very critical to us. And the companies that we have serving in our area are internet services providers, not necessarily telephone companies. And so it's very important, and we encourage your support of this as you look at expanding the program and expanding the funding. These are areas where the business model does not work. In many cases, they don't have the cash flow to expand this infrastructure. These grant and revolving loan fund programs provide them the working capital to provide these services to rural and remote communities. There isn't enough client base out there to, for them to be earning large amounts of money, which is why the larger companies don't want to come and serve these rural and remote communities. Much like any other infrastructure, sewer, water, rail, these broadband services are going to reach rural communities only with your assistance, and we encourage your support of this action.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Michael Green, California State Grains. We represent about 10,000 people joined together in over 200 community-based organizations, many of which are in rural communities. We supported SB 1191 in 2008, and we encourage your support of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. I'm Connie Stewart from the California Center for Rural Policy. We were one of the first organizations to join the Rural Consortium. And I just want to say also we're using these funds to hook up clinics, too, so we can have telemedicine in remote areas. And this is just a wonderful bill, and we thank you so much for authoring it and hope the committee will support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any witnesses in opposition? Okay, before I go questions to the committee, there are just one clarification. You are taking, you mentioned about amendments. Could you, I guess that's amendments number 3, 4, 5, and 7, or do you want to expand on that a little bit so we make sure of the bill's current status? What I have is we're going to take number 3, which is the funding allocation over 5 years.
Right, comment number 3, it's 5 years.
Yeah, and then the grant account, number 4.
Right, and it just specifies further what the accounts are for, sort of the scope of the accounts.
Right, and then the amendment revolving, the revolving loan account, number 5.
To specify an interest rate, right.
Excuse me, and then number 7, that's the report on the CASF program.
Right. So,
okay, the bill's been moved as amended. Is there any questions on the part of the committee?
Yes. Thank you. Just briefly, Senator Padilla, I know that we have an emphasis on the rural areas, and I very much support those efforts. In fact, I think it's long in coming, but as you know, we do have some pockets of unserved areas in the not-so-rural areas, and I was just wondering if you could just address briefly how this bill can also help achieve more broadband access in some of our more urban areas where there are pockets of.
Right. Well, when the fund was first established by the PUC, and then we codified it in the last year here through the legislature, the bill does not restrict or prohibit urban versus rural. It strictly is intended to help connect, if you will, the unserved as well as some underserved areas. So to the extent that there's some urban pockets that are unserved or underserved, they're certainly eligible for this fund. And I believe some of the applications that have come through have been in those areas. But if we look at where the 1.4 million unconnected Californians are, they tend to be, for the most part, in the rural areas, which is why I think you're hearing more of a rural emphasis to this conversation. But no, rural or urban areas are certainly eligible and have been participating.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the only one concern that I have with a lot of these types of programs is they're well intended. We want to make sure that they're being done for their intended purpose. Now, there will be a report coming out at the end of this year, as I recall, as far as telling us what progress has been made so far and where we're going.
Yes, the report was due from the last legislative action, so we do anticipate that at the end of this year. In the meantime, we've seen the interest in the program so strong that we feel it warrants raising the level of the program from the $100 million to more than $2 million. Plus, the unique window that we're in to leverage state dollars with Recovery Act dollars because of the broadband grants made available through the economic stimulus package from last year. We're extremely successful in this category, competing as a state in the first round, but we're certainly optimistic about the second round, just as we've been successful in the smart grid category as an example.
Well, I think extending the sunset date actually makes a certain amount of sense, given this recession we're currently in. It's kind of delayed a lot of things that people would have been doing in a normal economic environment. I do have some concern, though, about making sure that we aren't extending a program that, frankly, has been abused somehow. So do we have any safeguard here? What would we do in a case, let's say the report comes out in December and we discover that there's been things in there that, frankly, weren't intended and
well, then we'd certainly have the opportunity and the ability, both at the commission level and at the legislative level, to put a stop on it.
Okay.
That's why it's not just a sunset sort of time frame cap, but also the dollar cap with these reporting mechanisms along the way.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with it. Is there any other questions on the part of the committee? Not, we'll call for the vote.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Cox? Cox, aye. Flores? Kehoe? Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal? Lowenthal, aye. Oropeza? Semidian? Semidian, aye. Strickland? Strickland, aye. Wright?
Okay, 8.
That vote, Ozzy has enough votes to get out. Do we need to leave it open for now, though? Is that okay? And see, you have one more bill, and that's SB 1476.
So the last item is SB 1476. As many of you know, we've been almost like a broken record here last couple of years, pushing for smart grid deployment, smart grid planning, smart grid infrastructure throughout the state. And California, once again, leads the nation in this regard. As we get better familiar with the smart grid in general, we know that smart meters are a key component for maximizing the benefits of a smarter electrical distribution infrastructure. But this new technology also requires greater diligence on our part to ensure that we protect customers' personally identifiable information, which would include their consumption practices of both electricity as well as gas. So the purpose of the bill before you is to ensure that customers that have the benefits of the new technology of smart meters can participate with that new technology without relinquishing their personally identifiable information. As the smart meters are being rolled out and being utilized not just by utilities but by consumers, we want to make sure that they are fully aware that their information is protected, and to the extent that they participate in information sharing to the benefit of technology as a whole, that they have the appropriate sort of opt-in, opt-out alternatives, just as we have in other areas of technology and of the law. The bill certainly does not prohibit certain smart meters. It just does so out of respect with customer information.
Yeah, and this bill also has been referred to, if it comes out of this committee, then it'll go on to Judish as well, right? Okay, do you have any witnesses in support?
Good morning. Matthew Marcus with the Division of Ratepayer Advocates. We support consumers having full access to all their usage information. That way they can make informed choices on how to best use their energy and effectively to lower their monthly bills. At the same time, we want to make sure that this information doesn't fall into the wrong hands and be misused. We support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Greg Cook, representing the Northern California Power Agency. We support the legislation. We're committed to protecting the confidentiality of our customers' personally identifiable consumption information. Our goal in the smart meter program is to allow our customers to better manage their own personal usage while at the same time allowing us to better manage our electricity network. We see no other reason for the use of the information. We support the bill and urge your aye vote.
Thank you.
Lenny Goldberg on behalf of TURN, also the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse. We have looked at smart meter issues and see a variety of significant privacy issues there. There is another piece of legislation that will be before this committee, which is far more detailed with regard to the smart meter privacy issues. This bill takes a step forward. I should say that our folks, since we only saw the language on Wednesday, our support is in concept, since we haven't done a lot of analysis of the language, but at Senator Corbett's Committee and Judiciary, I think all these issues will be very closely examined and raised, so we're supportive of the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Would you like to make your close?
I have a comment.
Oh, questions. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Senator Padilla, I also glad to see you addressing privacy issues in this measure. And as you know, the bill will be going to Judiciary, where we always look very closely at privacy issues. And I look forward to working with you to make sure that we respect people's privacy in this very important new technology. I'll be supporting the bill today, but we'll be giving it a very close look in the Judiciary Committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee questions? Would you like to make your close?
Ask for aye vote.
Would you please call for the vote?
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Cox? Aye. Cox, aye. Flores? Kehoe? Aye. Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Lowenthal, aye. Oropeza? Semidian? Semidian, aye. Strickland? Aye. Strickland, aye. Wright? Aye. Wright, aye.
That has sufficient votes, but I'm now going to turn it over to our chair.
Okay, thank you. That has sufficient votes. I think Senator Oropeza was here momentarily. We'll give her an opportunity to come back in, and then we'll lift the calls and allow absent members to add on to all four bills. But in the meantime, let's proceed to the next segment of our hearing, which is a follow-up discussion with the California Energy Commission relative to specifically state energy program grants made available through California's receiving of Recovery Act dollars. If they can come forward at this time. Here's Senator Opez. Let's go ahead and lift the calls on all four bills.
SB 1040, Flores, Oropeza, Oropeza I, Wright. Right, I, Oropeza I. That bill has 10 votes.
Okay, that bill is out.
SB 1437, Flores, Lowenthal, Lowenthal I, Oropeza, Oropeza I, Strickland, Strickland I. 10-0.
That bill is out.
SB 1455, Flores, Oropeza, Oropeza I, Wright. Wright I. 10-0.
Okay, that bill is out.
SB 1476, Flores, Oropeza, Oropeza I.
Okay. So all four bills are out. Energy Commission. Energy Commission.
She was at the hall. She should be here. I saw her come in once already.
Okay. I guess they're just out in the hallway, so...
Mr. Chair, as you're waiting for the
Senator Corbett?
next folks to come in for the hearing, I would just like to note that I'm very impressed by the talent of your wonderful staff and their multitasking abilities at this morning's hearing, and I hope that everyone else is noting the terrific job that she is doing. Yes. She can do it all. Thank you.
While our friends from the Energy Commission get settled in, let me just sort of give a recap of the last hearing. Senator Dutton was patient enough at the last informational hearing to stick through to the end, but others had other committees and what have you. So let me put today's conversation in a little bit of context. The Energy Commission is before us today really as an evolution of oversight and questions that we've had relative to ARRA funds that have been awarded to the Energy Commission. And it was an agenda item in front of JLAC back in January. And at the time, there was concerns from some of us about whether or not the ARRA funds were moving as quickly as they should be. And initially, they weren't. The Energy Commission acknowledged that, but they got their sort of house in order, if you will, and came back quickly after the JLAC hearing with proposals on how to move certain ARRA funds out, period, out to the private sector, out to local governments, out to help create jobs. Upon review of how the awards were proposed to be granted, it raised questions in my mind, and I think in several of our minds, about the geographic equity of the proposed awards, recognizing unemployment is hitting all parts of the state, recognizing county by county unemployment statistics. There were concerns about geographic inequity in the proposed distribution of the awards. And so we began to have that conversation, and upon even further research about the process that led to the proposed contracts, the process that led to the proposed awards, we found what I would describe is at minimum an appearance of impropriety, and more specifically the relationship that some CEC staff members have with organizations that were competing for or being proposed to be awarded grant dollars, or at least a very close relationship with some of those organizations. So we've asked through a couple of letters, in addition to the last hearing, the Energy Commission a series of questions. And responses to those questions, both verbally and in writing, I believe has been shared with all members of the committee. I'd like today's conversation to focus specifically upon a couple of things. Number one, a pending, I'm not sure if it's recent release, but as of yesterday's conversation in my office, a pending review from General Services Department on the process and whether there was any inappropriateness in the process that led to the proposed awards, number one. Number two, we asked the Energy Commission for any either clarification on how the jobs to be created throughout the state better reflect unemployment throughout the state. And if it's not clarification from their recommended contracts and grants, then options for reworking the proposed awards to, again, better reflect unemployment throughout the state. Number three, one of the larger awards, no, Senator Cox, I'm not talking about Sacramento. I'm talking about an award proposed to go to a firm based in Portland that seemed, upon my office's review of the Portland Energy's proposal and application, to be really top-heavy, frankly. Top-heavy in terms of the amount of compensation going to executives that remain out of state, certainly in contrast to the training and use of California Conservation Corps members actually doing some energy audits in the state of California, and whether the numbers that I saw on the Portland Energy application available online as a matter of public record were indeed the final numbers, or if there was a way to rework those numbers. And number four, the comment from the chairman of the Energy Commission on the roles and relationship between involved staff members here and some of those external organizations, be it specifically in these cases or as a matter of overall policy for the commission, commissioners and staff. And last but not least, certainly sort of putting it out there that this has also caused me to have questions and want to inquire further, not just about all these policies as they apply to the Recovery Act proposed contracts and grants, but on an ongoing basis with all programs and awards through our public goods charge. So I know that's kind of a lot out there, but long-winded way of saying there's kind of 5 points that we wanted us to focus on today. Chairman Douglas.
Thank you, Chairman Padilla, and good morning, committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and testify in the Energy Commission's progress implementing the Stimulus Act. My name is Karen Douglas. I'm the chairman of the Energy Commission. To my right is David Meraki, who's the director of the California Conservation Corps. To my left, Robin Smutney-Jones is our legislative director. The Department of General Services is here in the office, and at the appropriate time, they'll be prepared to come forward and talk about the review that they just completed of the competitive solicitation that Senator Padilla, or Chairman Padilla, has raised some questions about. I'd like to start, and when I met with Senator Padilla yesterday, he framed the issue in terms of 3 questions he'd like me to address specifically, and the other issues I believe can come out, or we can talk about it after a brief presentation. First of all, the geographic distribution of ARRA funds and how specifically ARRA funds will create jobs throughout the state and in areas with highest unemployment. Secondly, the PECI contract, which is one of the bidders that won in the competitive solicitation for one part of the Energy Commission administered funding. It's a really exciting project, and the Conservation Corps will also speak to some of what will be done in the state of California. And thirdly, some of the perception issues that Senator Padilla raised, and I'll just say up front that this was a clean solicitation. It was found to be so by an external review. There was no conflict of interest. At the same time, Senator Padilla raised issues of perception and concerns about perception that I want to acknowledge and discuss when we get to that part of the presentation. Beginning with the distribution of funds, I'd like to just briefly explain what's in everybody's packet because there's a lot of information. One of our challenges in administering these ARRA programs is just dealing with information, and so I want to make sure that what you have is clear to you. The first page on the, if you open the packets in front of you, on the left-hand side you'll see maps, and on the right-hand side you'll see a number of detailed charts and spreadsheets. So the first document has these dark green and light green bars. It's the very first page. This is a status report on all of our programs. We've given a variety of this every time we've testified, every time we provide information on these programs. We're constantly updating this. And so this answers the question, what are the programs? How close, what's the status? How close are we to winding them down, money on the street, and moving really into the MV&E, or measurement, verification, evaluation phase of the program? The second document you'll see is a summary sheet for all funding from the workforce training, the ECA 1% loans, these are 1% loans for public buildings, and the block grant money, both to large and small jurisdictions. So the large jurisdiction block grant money is given out on a per capita basis to cities and counties by the Department of Energy. The small city and county block grant money was given out on a per capita basis with a small adder for unemployment rates. So the areas with higher unemployment rates got a little bit more money, and a minimum of $25,000 for cities and $50,000 for counties. So that's what's included. What's not included is the SEP 110 competitive solicitation, the Employment Training Panel awards, because a number of those awards were statewide, and the DGS Revolving Loan Fund. But this will give you a pretty good overview of where money has gone, except for those programs. We further break it down in the next sheet, which describes where the money has gone for the Employment Development Department administered funding. We did an interagency agreement with the Employment Development Department. The awards are all listed here. In the case of any of these awards, we can get more information if you're interested in what the projects are doing, how far along they are, and so on. The EDD funds got out the door quite quickly, and a number of these training programs are underway, and a few of them have actually been completed. The next chart you have.
Mr. Chairman, just so I understand the presentation, Chairman Douglas, you said the EDD funds got out the door quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Does that mean the whole $20 million?
Yes, the whole $20 million is out. And the next chart, which has orange, these are the ETP funding. And Senator Kehoe, thank you. I should clarify that when we look at, out is not a precise term. Yeah. And when the Energy Commission votes on approves a grant or votes on a grant, the funding is encumbered. But applicants who receive money don't actually draw down the funds until they have spent the money and they're invoicing. So these funds are drawn down in arrears. So when I say out, I mean that the work is authorized to go forward.
That you've appropriated it.
Right. Well, we've encumbered it. Yeah. They are able to. The next step after encumbering is we execute contracts, or in this case, EDD does because they're administering the money. Drawdown happens last after work is done, and it's invoiced in arrears. This chart in orange is the money that we administered through an interagency agreement with the Employment Training Panel. This money was also approved in the last two meetings of the Employment Training Panel, so this money is also encumbered, and the recipients are listed here. The next chart, which is in gray, lists the ARRA 1% loans. And if you remember, the Energy Commission administers ECA loans at 3%. It's the Energy Conservation Assistance Account. And what we did was add $20 million to that for ARRA. And this gives very low interest loans, 1% loans to local governments to do energy efficiency improvements in publicly owned buildings. It is fully subscribed. Not all of the contracts have been executed, but we expect that this money will be fully encumbered. And in fact, we encouraged local governments to leverage, to use some of their block grant money and then go for an ECA 1% loan in order to be able to do a bigger project, combining their block grant and the 1% loan. In order to fully meet the demand for that, we ended up looking at another small account and pulling another $1 million or so into this program from another account that we can talk about later. But we have fully met that demand, and this money will be fully encumbered very quickly. Those contracts are underway. The next thickest file here, which is in blue, is a list of the per capita funding. And you'll see that some of these are listed under funding program as CEC, small county and city block grant. Some of these are listed as DOE, large county and city block grant. So that just identifies, for your reference, the funding administrator. But all of these, as I described, are done on a per capita basis. The Department of Energy has its own formula. We used a slightly different formula for the funds that we administered, which gave an advantage for higher unemployment rates and also provided the minimums that I described. Because we didn't think that a grant of less than $25,000 was worth the trouble for a small city and $50,000 for a small county. We got very, very good uptake. There were a few cities and counties that did not participate in this, but by and large, virtually every city and county in California took part in the block grant program. The last, is it the last? Almost the last document in this sheet lists the proposed program awards for the SEP $110 million solicitation, and that's what I'm really going to focus the rest of my presentation on. I'm going to focus in particular, at the request of Senator Padilla, on the statewide and large regional programs that provide benefits broadly throughout the state. But what you have here is a list of all of the winning proposals. We had about 100 proposals. We were only able to fund 20 of them with the amount of money that we had available in the solicitation. So it was a very competitive process, and there were far more losers than winners, unfortunately, in that solicitation. We got great proposals from around the state.
And which category is that? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, just so I can keep track of the paperwork.
The SEP 110.
All right. Got it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Still going in order. The next piece of paper is a one-pager with no color on it. The headline is California Energy Manufacturing Program, $30.6 million. This is a low-interest loan program for private entities that want to open clean energy manufacturing facilities in the state of California. We're doing this through a partnership with Business, Transportation, and Housing, an interagency agreement with BT&H. Loans and underwriting will be done by financial development corporations. We have two in Southern California, both in Los Angeles, but they'll write loans for the region. One in Northern California, one in Fresno, that will be administering this program. And as you'll see in this write-up, the loans will be fairly small, from $50,000 to $5 million in size. We frankly, I'll tell you, I hope we get some larger applicants and not a whole bunch of $50,000 proposals, just because of the effort that it takes to come to fruition with these agreements. But we wanted to have a low threshold so that small businesses wouldn't feel as though they had to take a larger loan than they really needed and could use to make use of the program. So we set the threshold quite low. We go up to $5 million. I have heard great expressions of interest in this program, and I think it matches very well with the bill that Senator Padilla authored that reduces the tax burden for these companies when they locate or expand in California, the sales tax burden. So I'm really excited about this program. I think it's got tremendous potential. And last is a colorful flyer with a picture on it, and this is shows some of the marketing materials for the Cash for Appliances program. It's a rebate program that we're administering for $35.2 million. The Energy Commission established the eligible appliances at refrigerators, washing machines, and room air conditioners. There were a number of reasons for that. We had to select appliances that were useful statewide. We were looking at price differentials and where we could make the most difference with the rebate money. And importantly, we added room air conditioners because it's one of the few appliances that's really of value to renters. It's something that expands the reach of this program beyond homeowners and to people who are, they're especially used in the hotter climate inland areas, and it was something that we thought was important to add to the program. So that's everything that's on. That's the information that I've given you. I've covered it very quickly. We would be more than willing to come back and walk through it in more detail or answer any questions that you have. On the left-hand side of your packet, as it's open in front of you, we have a number of maps. The first map is a summary map, and the green dots are essentially symbolize how much money areas have gotten. And so one point I'll draw your attention to is that there is a green dot in every county in California, and that was important to us, and that was one of the reasons we were aggressive about doing the block grant that we administered on a per capita basis and really getting out into communities up and down the state and encouraging local governments and helping local governments apply for the money. So we've gotten the distribution spread throughout the state. This does not count the SEP competitive solicitation. It also does not count employment training panel money. It's keyed off of the same summary chart I gave you in the front. So the data went straight across. So the reason for that is that we found it very difficult to attribute statewide or large regional programs to individual counties in terms of dollar amounts because it's not known right now. And we don't know how to break down the dollars between different counties. I think that'll become more clear as I talk about what some of these statewide programs are, which is what I'm moving to right now. So the next set of maps map out the statewide programs in the SEP 110 solicitation. And what I think I should do before I talk about that in detail is back up and talk about what we were actually trying to do with the SEP 110 solicitation. As I described, a lot of the money that has gone out, in fact, the bulk of the money went out on a per capita basis. But we also wanted to provide some money that would provide significant enough financial incentives for cutting-edge regional approaches to energy efficiency that break down known market barriers and that will actually lead to sustained and sustainable job growth in this area. We invested, as I described, $20 million in workforce training. A lot of that went to workforce training for building technicians and others who do energy efficiency work. We don't want those people to become stranded. We want these people to have jobs and keep jobs and have these job programs that are being developed continue and grow. And so the way to do that is to break down market barriers, and we also, to do that successfully, we need to make sure that these are programs that are consistent on a regional basis. That was why we really pushed regional. We don't want, LA County has 88 cities in it. If you have different rules in terms of what's eligible, if you have different marketing, if you have different approaches in these 88 different cities within LA County, how do you have a comprehensive program? How does a homeowner or a building owner or a contractor not go crazy? And so that was why it was really important to us as much as possible to push statewide branding, statewide approaches, and at the very least regional approaches. And that was part of the intent in this solicitation. I'm going to start by, now $57 million out of the $110 million went to what I would describe as statewide or broadly regional approaches. And the first one, which is mapped out here in the blue, is the California First project. It's administered, the prime contractor is the County of Sacramento, but this is not money that's going primarily to the County of Sacramento. This is money for a program that in its first phase will involve 146 cities, 14 counties, and will cover 12 million residents throughout the state. And you can see in the blue the areas that are in the first phase of California First. The purpose of this program is to enable local jurisdictions throughout the state that might not on their own have the wherewithal to create municipal financing programs for energy efficiency upgrades to opt in to a program that can be applicable to them right away. It saves them significant administrative costs in starting up their own programs, and it creates a blueprint for consistent program implementation throughout all of the participating members. A couple exciting things about the California First program. First of all, that it does all of this legal and organizational work, and it does it through the statewide Joint Powers Authority of the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. It estimates about 2,000 jobs to be created or retained statewide. It's expected to result in about $130 million in financing and $7,500,000 in rebates and incentives to homeowners. That's an estimate that was created in the absence of the Homestar program, which we're looking very closely at because these are the sorts of programs that will allow California to take advantage of Homestar and really move and get our share and more than our share out of that upcoming federal program. Ms. Smutney-Jones has reminded me that I should explain something about Homestar. Homestar is a jobs bill that's fairly close to passage out of the U.S. Congress, and it creates a pool of essentially first-come, first-serve rebate money for energy efficiency improvements. The way the pool works, the entity that is able to essentially it's first-come, first-serve. If we are organized, if we get our residents to do these cost-effective energy efficiency improvements, we will get a much larger share of the job creation and the incentives coming out of that program. California First will work closely with local workforce investment boards. It also will set up a technical advisory committee that will include workforce development agencies, community colleges, businesses, unions, and so on. It's working in particular with the Grossmont-Cuyamaca Community College, Kern Community College, Kern-Inyo-Monyo Consortium, San Diego Workforce Partnerships, and San Luis Obispo County. You'll see that Riverside and Imperial counties are not in Phase 1. They have told us that they're actively looking at moving in on Phase 2 of California First this fall. San Joaquin County and the city of Stockton are looking at moving in, joining in Phase 2. So we hope to have additional uptake in California First. The next statewide program, and again, I'll say these are winning bids in the $110 million solicitation that are statewide or large regional. The next one I'd like to talk about is the Energy Smart Jobs Program, which is the one that would be administered by PECI. PECI is the Oregon nonprofit that Senator Padilla mentioned. This is a really exciting program. In fact, I really think it's one of our most exciting in terms of the model of working with the Conservation Corps, training at-risk youth through the apprentice to the journeyman stage, bringing them along in their own careers. It's got some very innovative measurement and verification methods as well that will allow it to be really scaled up, so that instead of having to send expensive engineers and deal with travel costs and high salary costs, that they've got some MV&E ideas that are really exciting. Mr. Meraki, would you like to talk about this program now?
Hello, David Meraki, Director of the CCC. We are very pleased to be a partner of this program. The program provides the young women and men of the CCC not only with opportunities to do important work, but also to gain skills that they need to transition into the workforce. And at the same time, it provides really substantial energy and cost savings for California businesses on the order of 88 million kilowatt hours annually of energy savings and about $42 million in cost savings to California businesses over 5 years. Our young people, our core members, would be trained to conduct audits of 23,300 audits is what we've targeted of commercial refrigeration units, primarily in grocery stores and convenience stores. Once those audits are completed, the data is entered into iPhones, and the iPhones then transmit that data into a statewide database. And from there, private contractors pick off that information, and then they contract with the commercial establishments to actually install the conservation measures. Once those are completed, our ARRA members return to the store and verify that the work has been done. We really look forward to working on this, and we think it'll be, in many ways, it's very consistent with the CCC and the energy conservation work that we've done over the last 3 decades.
Thank you, Mr. Meraki. We can talk more about this if you have questions. The project would start up, I believe, with 2 centers in LA, 1 in San Diego and 1 in San Bernardino, Riverside, as well as Sacramento. And San Jose?
Correct.
And San Jose. And one of the really exciting things about this program is that it's designed to scale up on demand. And this is one of the programs that my sense is the utilities are very interested in partnering with and adding cost share. And it has rigorous MV&E, and so there's a very good opportunity for them to benefit from the savings created in this program. That's an incentive for them to put money into this program. PECI has told us that they're interested, if they were to get more cost share, they're looking at Fresno and Redding as their first 2 expansion areas. I think that this is something that we can build on, and it's an exciting model. It also reaches and improves efficiency in buildings or refrigeration throughout the state, which is an exciting opportunity area. The next program that I'll talk about or proposal that was a winning statewide proposal is the Energy Technology Assistance Program, and this is the map that's in purple. The prime contractor for this one is Energy Solutions, which is based in Oakland, California. And what this contract would do is leverage utility programs and other incentives to target municipal building retrofits with cutting-edge lighting technologies, parking lot, garage bi-level lighting with occupancy controls, wireless HVAC controls, and so on. This is a program that some of the unions that have been active in this area are partners in. IBEW is a partner and is forming a California Labor Management Cooperative Committee with the National Electrical Contractors Association that will work with this program and do some workforce training linked to this program. It would create something like 211 direct jobs based on the ARRA formula, the DOE formula, which we're given to use to calculate jobs. But in all of these cases, we're actually accounting for the jobs, and we'll be able to provide real job numbers as well as the using the DOE sort of rule that they've given us to calculate jobs. We have thought in particular about, on some of these statewide programs, how we could work with the winners to ensure that we extend the benefits widely throughout the state, but in particular in Southern California. We are definitely looking at working with these applicants and IBEW and so on to establish additional contractor training venues in Southern California, and also to push some of the marketing with Southern California municipalities. I think there's significant potential to do that. Again, though, it's a statewide program, and it covers, as you'll see in the map, parts of the Bay Area, less of Southern California, but I think there are ways of trying to pull in some more partners down there, and so we're really interested in looking for ways to do that. The last summary, now the second to last proposal that's a statewide one, is it is the last, I'm sorry, I lost track of paper. It is the sort of yellow-orange map here. And you'll see that this one covers a lot of the far northeast of the state, the Sierra counties. This is the part of the state that has had the hardest time getting ARRA money. And if you kind of look at what regions of the state really have gotten a lower amount, it's some of these counties. This was an exciting proposal, and it was a proposal, frankly, that we weren't expecting, and we're somewhat surprised to get. And it scored very well. It was a very good proposal, and it was put forward by the RCRC, the Regional Council of Rural Counties. And what it will do is create a sustainable and self-replenishing source of loans and grants for comprehensive energy efficiency retrofits for rural Californian homeowners in the low to moderate income segments. It also coordinates and partners with California Workforce Investment Board, local workforce investment boards, and the Butler Corporation's Green Jobs Program. I'd be happy with all of these programs to provide more information about them. This one is focused low to moderate income, rural California, and it covers, we highlighted some counties that include both urban and rural areas, but it's really focused on the rural communities. So that concludes my summary of the statewide and the one large regional program. That's not all of the winners. I think, I'd be happy to come talk to you individually or come back to this committee and talk about all of the proposals, but I wanted to get to some of the other issues that I know are probably in the forefront of Chairman Padilla's mind, and take us back, if I could, to the PECI contract. One of the concerns that was raised about the contract is that it did go to an out-of-state administrator, and PECI had proposed, and the initial numbers that were used were around $2 million of the award would be spent in Portland. So one of the things that we did in response to Chairman Padilla's concern was talk to PECI about whether it was possible for them to move some of that money and some of that expenditure into California. And that's a discussion that's ongoing. They are very willing to look at places where it's effective to relocate some of the positions that they thought they would fund out of the Oregon office. They also do have existing program implementation infrastructure in Portland that would be leveraged for this program that doesn't make sense to move. They've got the rebate processing system, they've got the customer relationship management database, and so on. So they, this was already pushing them to expand their office in California. They're certainly planning to do so, but they were willing to look at moving some funding.
$40 that were attributed to the stimulus program, that if you were to look at this at another location, people would anticipate that the dollars actually have gone to California. Am I correct about that? Correct. So if nothing else, what we have is a little bit of a three-card money, because you've taken some money that should have been used in California and you've taken to Portland, and they're now saying that they're not prepared to send it back to California. Am I correct in that?
Well, Senator, I would say two things in response to that. One is that a large number of California companies have gotten contracts with ARRA money to do work in other states. It has not been the practice for any state to restrict those who can compete in a solicitation to only their state. And so I could come back and give you examples of that. But there are large numbers of dollars where California companies have competed successfully to do work in other states along these lines. What we required in our solicitation was that the winners show maximum job creation, maximum value to California. And if an Oregon nonprofit with tremendous specialized expertise in working with California utilities and working in refrigeration systems, specifically for California utilities, was able to partner with California institutions like community colleges and the California Conservation Corps to deliver the maximum benefits to California, we did not prohibit such an entity from applying, and I don't think it would have been in our interest to prohibit such an entity from applying. It's true that some portion of the administrative costs would go to Portland, and I hear the concern about that, and we're talking to PECI about what they might do in the state, but I just ask you to bear in mind that the scoring criteria were benefit to California, and we chose the proposals that scored the best based on what they could demonstrate that they could do in the state of California. Please.
Whenever you're ready for additional questions, because I have some, sir.
May I just add one more thing, Senator Cox, to that last question? In Robin Smutney Jones, the last packet of information that was sent to Senator Padilla and I think all the committee members did contain a letter from the U.S. DOE that clearly spoke to this issue and noted that it was never the intention of the ARRA program to prohibit or discriminate on a statewide basis, and they in fact encouraged regional collaboratives with other states. And I think to mutual benefit, and we were focused on value per dollar to California.
And that may very well be the case, but in our business, reality is perception is reality, and when you have perception that dollars that are meant for Californians are being used in another state, is not good.
And there's another level of detail here. I too have some follow-up questions, but I want Chairman Douglas to finish her presentation.
Let me wait then, sir.
Right.
Thank you. I actually can wrap up fairly briefly and move to questions. So we've talked to PECI about shifting some money to California. Not everything, but some of the positions can be shifted. And what really does not make sense to shift is some of the infrastructure that they've already developed that would be leveraged for the benefit of the program. Chairman Padilla's letter asked me to address more specifically than my response did how PECI, its officials, its employees, participated in our guidelines development process, and if they participated, just what communications, what participation there was. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to provide you with the full answer to that. This competitive solicitation was developed through a public process, and we had specific evaluation criteria that were written out in detail and vetted at several workshops, including one in Los Angeles, San Diego, Stockton, and San Francisco. Then we released the solicitation, and once it was released, we held a pre-bid conference for prospective bidders, which was attended by about 500 people. And we spent several hours there, or staff did, answering questions posed by attendees. In addition, we accepted written questions following the pre-bid conference, and we provided written answers to those questions, which we posted on our website for everyone to see. So that was the public process around the solicitation. One PECI staff member attended the workshop in San Francisco, where we explained early on the SEP program concepts. It was before the guidelines were finalized. One PECI staff member attended the public pre-bid conference held in Sacramento, where we explained the solicitation. And we explained the scoring criteria, and we answered questions there. And then one PECI staff person submitted a written question to our contract office during the time period where we were doing the written Q&A. And this question was about the process. It was answered on the Q&A addendum to the solicitations, and so we can get you, if you're interested in what the question was and what the answer was. But that was the involvement of PECI in the process. Let's see here. I think I don't need to go to the issue. I think what I'll do to wrap up fairly briefly, just so we can get to questions, is go to the issue of perception, which you raised. And so there's not only the perception issue that Senator Cox has mentioned about some of this money being administered by a company that's in Portland, but Senator Padilla also raised the perception issue that came about because some of our staff are involved in the California Commissioning Collaborative. In fact, we founded the California, and we started the California Commissioning Collaborative as an ad hoc group, and that's a group that PECI has been was brought into and helped staff. And I wanted to first...
And more specifically, I'm sorry to interrupt, I do want you
please,
to finish, but
please.
more specifically, you have CEC staff members on the board
yes.
of these entities.
Yes. And so I want to start by saying that this was a clean solicitation, there was no conflict. We have a letter from our attorney showing that DGS can speak to their review, but at the same time, I want to clearly acknowledge that perception issues can arise when you have that kind of involvement. And so I want to talk a bit about what the Commissioning Collaborative is and what its purpose is, and why I really think that there is no impropriety even falling short of conflict. But at the same time, acknowledge that we always have to be prepared to address these issues seriously when they arise, even when it's an issue of perception, or even especially when it's an issue of perception, and especially so with ARRA funds because of all of the scrutiny and all of the review that ARRA funds go through. The Commissioning Collaborative, it was started by the staff member who joined the board of the collaborative, and it was started as an ad hoc group that primarily involved the utilities to look at how to achieve commissioning of California buildings. And commissioning is a technical term here, and what it really addresses is the efficiency loss in the way most of our commercial buildings, it's focused on commercial, in the way that most of our commercial buildings are operated. Buildings are designed by a designer to operate in a certain way with certain specifications and certain efficiencies. The builder who actually builds the building does not necessarily have that in mind or have that foremost in mind in building the building and installing the major systems. And then the owner and the operator are two steps, one or two steps even further removed from the designer. And so what you get throughout the state are buildings that are being operated sometimes quite differently in terms of their energy systems from how they were designed. And so it's a 10 to 15% loss in efficiency versus the capability of the building. And it's a significant problem, and it's something that can be addressed. And so that's really what the Commissioning Collaborative was designed to do. The main benefit that came to the Energy Commission out of that collaborative was that was where we vetted some ideas that came into our 2005 building standards to deal with the commissioning issue. And it basically required testing of certain building systems that were the most likely systems to be poorly installed or suboptimally installed. But the collaborative after the 2005 standards was refocused on retro commissioning, which is going after these types of benefits in buildings that have already been built and incorporated. And it's an important area. And in particular, what it's achieved is developing some measurement and verification and evaluation standards so you can actually attribute the benefits of a retro commissioning job, and so that the utilities, when they invest public goods money in retro commissioning, are able to prove those benefits up at the PUC. So that's been the focus of the Commissioning Collaborative. The proposals that we got, with the exception of the successful proposals, with the exception of the LA City proposal, actually did not do commissioning. There were also 2 workforce proposals that trained in commissioning. So the board was not on point to the proposals that ended up winning. It was not a fundraising position. It was, and the staff member who was on the board had not gone to a board meeting in 4 years. And so I think from where we sit, we didn't even think about it. But that is something that Senator Padilla has and others have pointed out to us, and I think we do need to think about and probably should have thought about that issue. But I will also leave you with another thought, which is that something that I've been struggling with, which is the policy question. We could create a rule that said that no staff member who evaluates proposals is allowed to be on a board or be a participant in a collaborative or something like that. And what is gained by that is less appearance of influence from outside entities. What is lost by that is the opportunity for our staff to participate as much and learn from the outside world. And so as we think about these issues and as we sort of navigate this terrain. We're guided on one hand by the rules, which we certainly have followed. We're guided by perception and what might feel or look right or wrong to somebody. But we've also got to avoid the temptation to build a wall around our staff and retreat into the bureaucratic bunker and not talk to anybody, because that is the worst way to serve the state of California. And so those are my thoughts, and I'm interested and very open and willing to hear yours.
Can I add a punctuation point?
Please.
Just on this issue, when I learned about it as well, Robin Smutney-Jones again, Mr. Bill Pennington, the staff person in question, had dealt with this collaborative in the past, apparently, relative to building standards. This particular PECI contract is a refrigeration-related technology involving completely different PEI staff. So there was not even an association with the staff folks of the PECI in this case. So as a factual matter, it's simply irrelevant to this particular contract, not to, undermine the appearance issue, which we simply must address. My former boss, Senator Peace, always said perception is reality, and we know we need to look at that, and whether it's we see it or not, if it's viewed that way, we need to address it. Thank you.
You done? Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
So the three areas that, again, you sort of emphasized that I requested you concentrate on today, the geographic distribution of the funds. I think you've sort of painted a better picture today than we've been given in the past. Maybe not completely reflective of unemployment throughout the state, but much better than previous conversations and presentations. And at least you've outlined, not from the SEP category, but others where there's still money's coming, if you will, whether it's a second round or future awards to be negotiated. So I'm getting an increasingly more comfortable feeling about that. I still have more than a couple of questions about the PECI contract, and I certainly want to continue this appearance of impropriety conversation as well, but I'll afford Senator Cox the opportunity to ask his questions first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by thanking you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's while I was kidding a little bit about Sacramento and your area, I am very sensitive to that particular issue. But I do thank you for your thoughtful way of digging into this and perhaps getting some more information. But we are dealing with a situation where perception is reality. You can talk about complying with the laws and all of that sort of thing, but the reality is that if you didn't comply with the laws from a perception standpoint, if you didn't comply, it creates a real problem. Let me just ask you a couple of questions about the process. Was there any prohibition of that which has occurred in this particular situation? Did it ever occur to you that you might want to put in some rules and regulations prior to this relative to folks sitting on boards that were going to be making decisions about distribution of money?
We have conflict of interest attorneys in the commission who have worked with us to we administer.
Let me do this differently as opposed to your attorneys. Is there not anyone there that has any common sense that sits on a board that says, whoops, looks to me like I ought to recuse myself from this particular issue?
Well, we do. And for example, this is an issue that comes up for commissioners all of the time because we're the ultimate decision makers on these contracts. And so when we sit on boards, we have to consider very carefully what issues could arise out of that. So this is an issue that we're very sensitive to. I have to say that I think the reason that this issue did not rise to our attention is that it was a board that the staff member in question just hadn't even gone to in so many years. And so what this...
And the question then that pops out of my mind, if they hadn't gone in 4 years, and I believe that's what you said, what are they still doing on the board?
Well, that question has come to my mind as well, and we're looking into whether he's the right person to be sitting on this board or whether this is...
Doesn't sound to me like they're sitting on the board, is it to you?
Not for 4 years.
Okay. Let me... I think you understand what the issue is. I'm confident about that, but let me ask you a question. Is it a situation that this is also a question relative to the abilities of the grant writers? And so we have some folks who are out of state, specifically Portland, who are much better at writing grants than some of our other folks. Is that an issue? Senator,
I don't think so. We have very, very good consulting firms and grant writers in this state, and particularly in areas of the state where the energy efficiency industry really was born in California and through some of California's leadership. So I think California has tremendous capacity in this area, and that's one reason why I am so reluctant to take the step of trying to think about building a wall around California and saying, well, nobody from out of state should compete because they've got better grant writers. I just don't think that's true, and I think, frankly, we've got better grant writers, and we've got companies doing very well, doing work in other parts of the country. But Senator, if I could, it is also true that there are better and worse grant writers, and that sometimes the quality of proposals does not come through. Our staff does detailed debriefs with unsuccessful applicants when they ask for them. Our staff has done a number of them that I've heard about in some detail, both from the staff and from the entity that was debriefed. And we are looking at whether grant writing workshops and other kinds of outreach would be a good thing to do out of this, given some of the geographic concerns with who was successful. And so this is an issue that we take seriously because sometimes the value of the proposal does not come through in the application.
Do you have a significant number of folks like Portland, out-of-state folks, that have been participating in the grant applications all along during your tenure on the commission?
I think it would be true to say that there are some consulting firms and some groups that have an energy-focused business model where they work often with the utilities, the Energy Commission, and the PUC, and they've developed a specialized expertise in our processes and in the subject matter. That is, I'll tell you that in administering ARRA programs, where the stakes are so high and the timeline is so short for what we need to do, specialized expertise is, by and large, a good thing and something that we give extra points for. But at the same time, if your broader question is getting to access to the Energy Commission process and ensuring that we draw from a broad talent pool and not always from the same companies, I think this is an area where we could and should do some work. And
relative to the forensic work that sounds to me like it needs to be done relative to this grant writing, have you spent enough time, or have you had staff spend enough time to determine whether or not you are speccing anyone in or speccing anyone out?
Do you mean by making the solicitation so detailed in its requirements?
Yes, ma'am.
I do not believe we're doing that, particularly in this solicitation.
But my question is, have you done any forensic work to determine whether you have or not, as opposed to your opinion?
I'll tell you what my opinion is based on. We did not do forensic work of the type that you have in mind, although we could. But my opinion is based on the fact that we had a number of successful applicants who are not traditional Energy Commission contractors. And in fact, I would say that most of our successful applicants are not the consulting firms that first come to my mind as the firms that work with us most often. And some of the unsuccessful applicants who I thought might have done better did work with some of these leading firms. So I really think that when we look at who won and what the pattern is of who typically does business before the Energy Commission, there is some pretty good evidence that this was not such a specific solicitation that there could only be certain winners.
All right. I'll hold the rest of my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cox. Just for starters, we had a conversation yesterday about how quickly these contracts or awards may be agendized for the Energy Commission for final approval. And I believe you have another meeting coming up on the 21st.
That's correct.
We still have the understanding that would be the earliest this would be agendized?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a conversation today, and if there's further questions as I'm hearing from Senator Cox, we have a couple weeks to get some follow-up information and answers from you. This committee has a hearing on the 20th, so we may indeed have additional conversation then prior to your meeting on the 21st. Number one. I'll start off with this. I have questions on the PECI contracts. I'll come back to those and continue Senator Cox's discussion about the appearance of impropriety area of this. I mean, I respect the fact that you checked with your attorneys and they gave you a letter saying no laws were broken here. But I do believe their letter and their review was specific to did anybody financially benefit from decision-making that was going on here. The question about a particular board member that hadn't attended in several years, that board member does have an alternate to the board, correct?
It's not so much an alternate. We have two staff who have a role on the board, Bill Pennington and Norm Barraza. They represent different programs out of the Energy Commission. Bill is with the Energy Efficiency Division and Norm is with the PEER program. So Norm has attended some board meetings, and he's been a more regular attendee of the PECI.
Okay, so
or I'm sorry, of the commissioning collaborative.
But you know what? I'm not surprised you can confuse the two, because frankly, I confuse the two quite a bit. It's part of the backdrop here is you have Portland Energy, you have the commissioning collaborative. They both have the same executive director. They're both located at the same address. A lot of crossover in terms of staffing and board membership. Are they, the question I asked you at the last hearing was whether these were indeed two separate entities, because it looks a heck of a lot like it's two arms of a single entity. So whether one's on one board versus the other, or one has an alternate, et cetera, the lines are pretty darn blurred.
I believe that they're separate entities with separate governance structures and different missions.
The question about the review and whether it was only for financial benefit or whether we should even be concerned about Portland Energy, the commissioning collaborative, in this Recovery Act process versus other grants and awards they have successfully competed for or been sole source recipients of. Just wanted to point out the uniqueness of, I think, the Recovery Act dollars. While in other programs, if you will, energy efficiency or innovation in energy efficiency might have been a key driver or an exclusive driver. In this case, I think the energy efficiency and environmental benefits are at least met by the job creation goals of Recovery Act dollars. So that's why I think we are treating this uniquely in respect to in-state versus out-of-state, or jobs created in California versus compensation to executives that are not going to be working in California. So I wanted to sort of distinguish those. Question about the commissioning collaborative. You mentioned that the Energy Commission established the commissioning collaborative.
The Energy Commission pulled together the ad hoc group that became the commissioning collaborative, and we did that in order to vet and promote some ideas that we wanted to wrap into the building standards.
What year was that, and were you personally involved?
I was not involved, and I would have to get back to you on what year that was. It was, yeah, it was. I want to say early 2000s. We'll confirm. It was certainly before 2005. I don't think it was at the very beginning of the 2000s.
So I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you spoke earlier in response to Senator Cox's questions, you said the Energy Commission established the collaborative.
That's right. Energy Commission staff, not the commissioners.
Energy Commission staff established the collaborative. Okay. Why would energy commissioners or staff establish a California commissioning collaborative and locate it in Portland?
The collaborative is it's essentially a collaborative stakeholder group that.
But it's a California commissioning collaborative. Would it make all the sense in the world, especially given their working relationship with the California Energy Commission, to headquarter a California commissioning collaborative in California?
It certainly would. PECI is, while an Oregon company, is a company that does, or a nonprofit is what I should call them. It's what they are. It's a nonprofit that does a lot of work with the California utilities and actually administers portions of their public benefits programs, particularly in refrigeration, but in other areas as well. And so PECI is the implementing arm of many California energy efficiency programs. What I did not verify before I come here and would have to get back to you on is how PECI was selected as the staff, essentially, of this collaborative. I suspect that it was a competitive process, but I do not know, and so I'll have to get back to you on that.
So I feel like we're getting to another layer of the onion here. On the one hand, why would the Energy Commission or Commission staff feel a need to establish an external entity and not do that work sort of in-house with our own staff and our own expertise?
When we do our standards, one of the reasons why I believe the Energy Commission has been successful is that we've got a track record of working with industry and working with the utilities to create standards that work. And so we do not sit in our concrete bunker and devise on our own the standards that we want to impose on the industry. What we do literally is work with the industry and develop really from research to prototype to we work with them on standards, we work with them on market barriers, and we do this in a number of ways. The Lighting Center at UC Davis is an example. That's something that is supported in part by peer funds, and so what we've created there is a working group of manufacturers in lighting. But I think I'm clearly going off on a tangent for you. What I'm saying is our process is to work with stakeholders and work with the industry, and so that's a collaborative is a good way of doing that.
Of all the monies that the Energy Commission has granted to the commissioning collaborative over the years, how much of the work has been done by the collaborative and the staff itself versus them turning right around and contracting out for some of that work?
I have to get back to you on how the collaborative has done its work. I can get back to you. I can get back to you on what their budget is, where they get money from, who's actively involved, how they staff out the work. And when they contract
for the work, because they're receiving money from the Energy Commission for a certain purpose, a certain deliverable or product. Right. Do they put it out to bid? Do they sole source? How do they put their money?
I have to find out. The collaborative includes all of the IOUs and SMUD as members that provide financial support as well. I'm not prepared to answer the questions on how they do their business, but I'd be happy to get back to you with that.
Because my understanding is PECI is a pretty large. I'll let you quantify when you respond after today. But PECI is a large beneficiary of the California Commissioning Collaborative's contracts.
PECI staffs the collaborative, and so PECI does the staff work for the collaborative. But I don't know, and I will quantify and get back to you, what PECI does itself for the collaborative, what might be outsourced, how much the utilities provide to the collaborative versus some of the other participants. This is all information that we can provide.
And the flip side of that question will then be for PECI, what percentage of their overall revenues does the commissioning collaborative represent? How much of PECI's revenues does the Energy Commission represent?
We'd be happy to get back to you with that.
But, I mean...
Can I...
no,
just to understand the question, I want to...
We talked about PECI and the Commission having the same executive director, same address in Portland. Board membership, first red flag, cause for concern. You're saying they're two separate entities, but now you're saying PECI staffs the commission. So
staffs the California Commissioning Collaborative. Correct.
Excuse me, staffs the collaborative. And you can see why it's getting complicated here.
Well,
I've been accused of being simplistic in my concerns and simplistic in my questioning of what's going on here. If we have this, maybe from a legal technical standpoint, an attorney that signs off, there's no conflicts of interest that played out here. From a perception standpoint, there seems to be more questions that come up as we discuss this further and further.
Senator, we will get back to you with the answers to those questions. I will say that there's nothing unusual about a group like PECI being hired to administer or a program or staff a program. The legal entity is the governing body, and
so the concerns about conflicts and impropriety are twofold. One, this process, this contract specifically, number one. Number two, I think the greater conversation is on a going forward basis. I'll paraphrase a question from Senator Cox. What can or what will the Energy Commission do to revisit its policies internally to ensure that there are no conflicts or perceptions of conflicts on a going forward basis? You raise a valid point about, well, let's not be too harsh here because we want our staff and even commissioners to be involved with external organizations. We're not suggesting a prohibition on attending conferences. We're not suggesting a prohibition on other ways of being involved. But once you're a board member of an external entity, paid or not, that comes with certain responsibilities, and some would argue certain allegiances or alliances towards certain organizations based on that official affiliation. And when it's those same very entities or an extension thereof that are now competing for the dollars, whether I'm personally compensated for my time or not, and we're talking about public dollars here, not a private contract between two companies, but taxpayer monies going out there, it's getting real convoluted. And so, yes, we want your responses and some of that additional information as a follow-up.
Let me just ask one additional question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cox.
It may very well be a situation where you're beginning to stay too long in one spot. Just want you to know that, because it's that peeling back of that onion that Senator Padilla was talking about. What I heard you say was that staff created this agency. Is it the common practice with the Energy Commission for staff to make a decision about creating a commission that has the duty and responsibility of executing contracts that in some way come from the Energy Commission?
Senator, I think I wasn't careful enough about what I said. Staff initiated the creation of an ad hoc group that grew into the collaborative. But the decision to incorporate the collaborative was made by the participants of the collaborative, included the utilities and the other stakeholders. And at that point, once incorporated, the collaborative became a separate legal entity that was not and is not in any way owned by the commission or its staff.
But the going forward aspect, was that something that the executive director of the Energy Commission said, yeah, I think that's a good idea, we need to go ahead with that? And if it was not the executive director, was it the board of directors?
I would need to go back, and I can find the answer to the question in terms of what level of approval was reached. I suspect that it would at least have gotten to a policy committee, which is a committee of 2 commissioners that oversee certain divisions. But I need to verify that was the case, and it may involve calling some former commissioners and finding out.
And that would be helpful. This would be one member of the Senate that would be very much concerned to find out that while we have great staff, that staff is making decisions about putting collaboratives together that ultimately have something to do with distribution of funds.
And that would be 2 of us.
Very
Senator
good.
Cox.
Well, your committee will get that information. I think that the collaborative does not distribute funds.
Well, but look, they've got their hands in the pie.
The collaborative receives funding from the Energy Commission and from other participants to do work, and so we will get you the information that you're asking about.
All right, that'll be fine. Thank you, ma'am.
Sort of along the lines of the questions I asked earlier. How much money has the Energy Commission awarded to the collaborative over the years? Do they fulfill the obligations of those contracts directly by their work product, or do they sort of contract with others for the fulfillment of those obligations and responsibility? Not as another question, but on this topic of conflict of interest, by perception or otherwise, on a going forward basis. I mean, what more specifically is the Energy Commission going to do? Are we going to agendize it? Are you going to agendize it for commissioners to discuss at a future meeting? Are you kicking it around as the chairperson of the commission? Are you asking staff to come forward with maybe recommended changes to policy or amendments to policy? What are you doing?
What I will do, Senator, is talk to the vice chair of the commission, and the 2 of us as the Budget and Management Committee of the commission will ask staff for recommendations about what I will call policy guidance that we may provide to look at this issue. And again, I think you and I have an understanding of what we're doing. We're not trying to build a wall around our staff, but we're thinking about treating board positions differently or thinking about them differently. And it may also be that certain kinds of board positions are different than other kinds of board positions, but we will look at articulating something that we can come back and talk to you about.
I would also encourage you to look to external sources for ideas or input.
Very good.
Whether it's the Attorney General's office, the FPPC, there's other sort of political law attorneys up and down the state that may be worth having a conversation with. I mean, to be really cynical about this, you're saying you're going to ask staff for recommendations when it's Energy Commission staff, maybe not the same staff, but Energy Commission staff that's been on these boards, and the reasons for all these questions. So let's broaden your input process a little bit for this specifically. Let me come to the Portland Energy contract again. I know hasn't been agendized and won't be agendized until the 21st.
Senator, that contract may actually be agendized after the 21st. They're coming to the business meeting as they get ready for execution.
So both at the last hearing today and in between, we've had conversations of, for lack of a better term, any opportunity to rework the numbers for their proposal and possible contract because of what I consider to be exorbitant salary levels or compensation from the executives out of state.
I think that we should have a further discussion offline about that. The salaries and the indirect benefits and the other aspects of the contract are really comparable to the others. They're not out of line.
Well, let me be more specific in my question then, because we pulled offline, it's public information, the original proposal from Portland Energy Conservation, Inc., and sort of their compensation schedule, if you will. And it's in Exhibit B, Attachment B3, prime rates from their original application. I don't expect you to have it in front of you, but you might.
I do.
Projected hourly rates. It gave a list of names, job classifications, projected total hours worked, etc. Looking at the ceiling rates for different periods of time, I'll leave the names out for now, but an associate director with being paid at a rate of 211 or 228 or 261, I would assume that's an hourly rate, projected hourly rate. Just yesterday afternoon, we were given sort of a revised schedule, if you will. Same individual, same title, same projected hours worked, but now the projected hourly rates are in the range of $66 an hour, 72, 77. The footnotes,
That's
so we know we're
loaded versus
talking apples
unloaded.
to apples about whether it's loaded or unloaded, are consistent. The big difference between the two schedules.
Senator,
How could somebody have been so off on the first go-around?
What we asked for in the solicitation was for the applicants to provide us with unloaded rates, and unloaded rates are basically the salary without fringe benefits and without other overhead costs. PECI gave us loaded rates for whatever reason. They weren't the only ones who did that. A number of other applicants made the same mistake. It was not a disqualifying mistake, and I actually brought I don't know that I need to read them, but I brought the solicitation terms. It's very clear about what's a disqualifying mistake and what isn't. And we don't tend to throw somebody out just because they didn't comport with the exact word of everything that we asked for administratively. It's the sort of thing we can come back and get. So we have substituted, as you point out, we have substituted the rate sheet that includes the unloaded rates as opposed to the loaded rates. Now, the difference in them is essentially the load. So the difference in them is the fringe benefits. So that's health care and retirement and all the other things that are allowed to be counted on as fringe benefits, plus indirect overhead costs, and there's also a general and administrative category, and there's a profit category, and those are all it covers rent, it covers office space, it covers the basic systems and infrastructure that you need to have in order to run one of these operations. And I'll tell you, as somebody who was the executive director for a short period of time of a nonprofit that did projects like this, if you don't recover your costs for doing projects, you go bankrupt. That's what happens. So
it's not just in the nonprofit sector, the private sector.
Well, the private sector,
that principle applies.
Yes, that's true. That's not my experience. My experience was in the nonprofit sector, but it's true across the board. So and many of the consulting firms that work with us are for profits. But in any case, that's the way it works. We have the breakdown of what they've provided to us in terms of these other costs. It's totally within the range of other proposals.
I mean, it's just, I appreciate what you're saying in terms of, well, maybe the new numbers are just clearer numbers, better interpreted numbers, but it's still a big gap. I mean, if this is somebody's hourly rate, and because they factored in originally fringe benefits and overhead and profit, we're looking at 3 to 4 times the number.
That's true.
How much overhead are we talking about? Based on their hourly rate?
We're talking about
benefits are equal to their hourly rate, and then some, plus profit, plus whatever.
We're talking about 21% fringe benefits, 145% overhead, and a 10% profit component.
So 10% profit is specified?
Yes.
145% overhead.
Specified.
What's included in that overhead?
Well, we can get you the details, but it's things like computer services, rent, accounting, marketing, other systems.
And these are items that don't appear in other parts of their sort of itemized budget or application? We're not double counting here?
No, we're not double counting here. They actually, one of their strengths was that some applicants give you a very big miscellaneous cost item that's hard to identify. They were very specific about what their costs were.
So when the hourly rates came down from the 200 plus range for one individual to the 60 to 70 range for that same individual, did the overall grant or contract number come down?
No, the contract number did not change because I think so. Two things: what we pay for in a contract is the direct cost, which is the unloaded salary rate plus the indirect costs and the overhead and the profit. And so what you got with the loaded rate is the number with all of this loaded in, and it's also based on the ceiling rate, which is something we don't need to get into detail on. But the cost of the contract is about the same. Now, what I will say is that when we rate proposals and when we evaluate proposals, we do not look at the rate sheet. The use of the rate sheet is for contract development, and what it is meant to do is fix the maximum that they can bill us for these people's time and for this work. Now, what
understand what some people may suggest is my skeptical or cynical point of view on this. An outside the state firm, submitting these big numbers, and all of a sudden when we ask questions, they're being revised and they're come down pretty significantly. There's a smell test here, number one. But let me actually, since Mr. Meraki's here, ask a couple questions about the Conservation Corps. Again, we had a follow-up conversation since the last hearing in my office. Can you summarize for us again the number of Corps members that would be trained or employed, temporary or otherwise, through this contract?
Senator Padilla, the plan is for 2 cohorts of 60 CCC staff and Corps members to be hired over the course of the grant. The original grant term that we were planning on was 24 months. That time keeps getting compressed, and so we'll have to make some adjustments. But the basic plan is 2 cohorts of 60.
So 2 cohorts of 60. That's about 120
Correct.
Corps members. And how many overhead positions or supervisorial positions would be on top of that?
The 120 or the 60 is both staff and Corps members. The staffing includes team leaders for 6 teams. Those are crew supervisors, and then 1 program coordinator, and we have 2 folks that are one in the north, one in the south that are.
So the jobs to be created or workers trained under this contract include Conservation Corps,
correct,
folks, Portland Energy executives or other staff members. Any other groups of workers that I'm missing here?
The private contractors who will be doing the actual energy retrofits, and I believe that the Department of Energy calculation assumes that there are these other jobs that are created, LED manufacturing jobs, which are difficult to quantify.
So if I read from the Portland Energy application, they estimate that at a minimum, through workforce development of 400 people, the program will create 117 direct jobs and contribute to the retention of more than 200 contractor and auditor positions in California. And as a result, the program will directly contribute to the personal income of at least 317 Californians. Again, I don't expect you to have that in front of you, but does that sound right to you? That this is what we got from their application, which is available online. So I'm just trying to do some math here because the Corps accounts for about 120. We've just been told. I can't imagine we're getting, 200 overhead positions at the Portland Energy. So
Portland Energy has 12 staff.
12. So if we add 12 to the 120, we're at 132. And so the balance of the 400 or the balance of the 317 are attributable to who?
There are, as I mentioned, a number of private contractors that are included in that number. I believe that the minimum of private contractors is estimated at 50. And then there's
but still 120 plus 12 plus 50 is a far cry from 400, a far cry from the 317.
We can get back to you on this. Now, we count leverage. We allowed and we asked applicants to talk to us about their leverage and count leverage money. They're also looking at the auditors. They're looking at jobs created. They're also looking at jobs retained. And so we'd be happy to get back to you with our contract staff who evaluated the full application and talk to you about, more broadly about the different aspects of this proposal and what will be done.
And again, I appreciate the fact that the contract is not final. It's still being worked. I'm trying to impress upon everybody the point that the more we can refine the numbers and rein in the executive compensation here, the more funding we make available for the training of additional Corps members, California residents, doing work and trained for California jobs, or even on the leverage side of this with the private contractors, with California companies creating those job opportunities and achieving that energy savings in California.
I hear you, Senator. I still am not convinced that there is excessive compensation in this package, and so that's something that we brought our contracts person over to your office yesterday to sit. Oh, we phoned, but we're willing to come over and sit down and talk to you about it. We're willing to talk about this in context of other contracts and other types of companies who work with us, but
and I think we're making progress. But as long as the numbers keep changing, we keep having questions too. So we're getting there. Today's discussion in a public forum, I think, was good, both for the committee and for the Energy Commission, particularly as a step from the last hearing we had on this. But clearly, there's still some more work to do. But just to sort of recap. Appreciate the additional information and better context for the geographic distribution of resources and jobs to be created. Number one, the PECI contract is still being worked on, and I think we're clear now with each other on what direction we'd like to see this go in before any final contract is voted on by the commission. Clearly, there's increasing numbers of questions, but a commitment on your part at the commission level to tackle this appearance of impropriety concern that we have. And to reiterate 2 points I made at the beginning, the three that I asked you for yesterday, but the two that have arisen since. One, this has, at least in my mind, set the stage, set a foundation for an ongoing conversation about contracting practices, et cetera, for all the programs funded through the public goods charge. Okay. I know that's going to be a conversation, particularly this fall and next year, as that charge is sunsetting.
Right.
And we'll have a policy conversation on does it make sense to continue it or not, or how to change it going forward. But I got to tell you, asking the General Services Department to have conducted the review, and maybe different units of General Services Department, but is General Services a member of the collaborative?
No. General Services is here, and I'd really appreciate it if they come forward and speak to their review, why they're the agency that's appropriate to do this, and it really, the governor's office asked General Services to do the review. I had no involvement in the review. I think it's best to have General Services speak to the review.
Come on forward. Is Dan Burgoyne one of the individuals in front of me?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Is Dan Burgoyne here from General Services?
He is not. I'm Scott Harvey, Chief Deputy Director of General Services, and I have with me our General Counsel, Jose Aguirre, who actually conducted the review at the Governor's request. And in a nutshell, we did not go to the issue of appearance. We went to the issue of actual conflict and determined there was none. We looked at the policies and procedures and determined that there were no violations of procurement law. And as you know, we haven't actually seen the award because it hasn't been approved by the Commission yet, and we will do our further due diligence when it comes to our shop, our legal shop, for its determination. And if you have any specific questions, Mr. Aguirre can answer them.
Well, the two specific questions, and thank you for being with us, Mr. Aguirre, is, again, in the spirit of Senator Cox's questions and statements earlier, while on the one hand, no laws seem to have been violated getting to this point, have we learned from this experience anything that would lead us to make a recommendation on changing policies going forward on specifically the involvement of state employees, Energy Commission staff members, and their involvement with these external organizations that are directly and indirectly beneficiaries or recipients of state contracts or awards.
Well, the selection of the evaluation committee members lies within the state agencies, and most state agencies, which I assume also CEC, has some internal policies on the screening level that they go to find out if there's any kind of conflict of interest. We don't oversee that directly from DGS at my level, but we know, well, I know that other agencies have similar policies, and as Chairman Douglas says, they have their own, that we were looking at that. But we do look to see if there's any appearance of a conflict of interest when we do our review.
And Mr. Burgoyne, Dan Burgoyne, are you familiar with him?
No.
And his work?
I am. He's a member of our so-called green team in our real estate services division.
Okay. And if you check the California Commissioning Collaborative website, he's listed as a board member.
That's information to me.
Senator, I'm sorry, that's information to me too, and I will be learning more about the collaborative. But I was just, Ms. Smutney-Jones and I were just whispering back and forth about whether it was, whether DGS as a owner and operator of commercial buildings would have any interest in the collaborative. So you can look into that. So I apologize for that answer.
Conversation to be continued. Thank you all very much for being here. If there's nothing further from the committee, this meeting is adjourned.